Hi, I'm Femi OK and you're in the stream. Today, ending statelessness. That's what the UN Refugee Agency wants to do in 10 years. So what will it take? So we always invite you, our audience, to take part in a conversation, particularly today. If you have any questions about the issue of statelessness, well, really, Malika Bilal is your person. That's your way through into a conversation and ask, I guess, pretty much anything, right, Malika?
Right. And there are questions already coming in. There's also some answers on what does it look like to be without a state. There's people within our community that can relate, and so we're hearing from all over the world, including Kenya, where Ismail says we're born in a country which refuses to accept us. So we're also hearing from other places around the world. This is from Bahrain, where this person says you can't get public medical care, no employment, you can't own real estate, and you face deportation. There are those stories. We want to hear from you as well. Your questions, as Femi said, your comments, use hashtag AJStream.
My name is Alex Narasta, and I'm the Immigration Policy Analyst at the Cato Institute, and I'm on the stream.
During this half-hour program, 3 babies will be born stateless. That's according to the UN Refugee Agency, or UNHCR, and there are at least 10 million people around the world living without a nationality. This means they don't have legal status anywhere, which prevents them from getting proper education and basic public services. It also limits employment opportunities and makes them targets for exploitation. But UNHCR hopes to change that. They want to end statelessness by 2024. They've launched a global campaign called I Belong to draw attention to this issue. They also put out a special report highlighting the human impact of statelessness and a 10-point action plan to end it. But will the international community answer this call? To discuss this, we're joined by Mark Manley, who heads the Statelessness Unit at UNHCR. Tina Zainuddin is child rights activist in Malaysia. Wonwin Mambi is a human rights, democracy and good governance consultant. And Wonwin also focuses on sub-Saharan Africa. And Namin Murad is a Jordan-based journalist and activist focusing on gender bias issues. So great to have you all here in the stream. I want to play you something. Welcome everybody, it's great to have you all here. I want to play you something from the I Belong campaign, which is what UNHCR just launched at the beginning of November. It kind of crystallizes the exact issue they're trying to actually end. Have a look at this.
Imagine being born invisible. You are alive, but can't prove you exist. You want to learn, but no school will take you. You want to be useful, but aren't allowed to work. When you're sick, the doctor ignores you. When you fall in love, they won't marry you. You don't have children. For fear, they'll be invisible too. You are sure you're human, but have no human rights. And when you die, there is no proof you ever existed. Every 10 minutes, a person like this is born. 10 million people in the world are stateless. They have no nationality and are told they don't belong anywhere. But everyone has the right to nationality. Everyone has the right to say, I belong.
So Tini, that really focuses our mind on what it actually means to not have a nationality, not to belong anywhere. From your perspective, give us a real story from your life where you can actually say to us around the world, this is what it means.
Well, I've adopted children over here, 5 legally, 2 who have actually brought up, and I'm actually in the process of adopting a 3rd, of which 2 of them are stateless. My daughter is now 6, and the only reason I know she's 6 is because the doctor says when we got her that she was about 2.5 months old. And it's been a journey. It's been a fight, actually. I only got her birth certificate about 2 years ago, and I've applied for a citizenship with the Home Ministry, and we're still waiting to hear, and we haven't heard anything. So in the meantime, she has to go to school, and you know, I have to send her to private school, so which means I have to work a little harder.
So Tini, why can't she just go to regular school? Why does she have to go to private school?
Because children who don't have proper documents or who are not Malaysian don't have access to free and equal education in Malaysia. It's just how it is.
Right.
And so she's not even allowed to go, so she gets sent to private school.
Wow.
Right now she's in kindergarten. She's going to primary school next year.
I've got a picture on my laptop, and there's two little kids here with certificates. Are they both your children? And cameras. What are cameras doing there?
Well, this was a whole press conference where the then Minister of Home Affairs, who's in charge of issuing birth certificates and also citizenship. This was birth certificates.
Right.
I have about 22 parents who have adopted stateless children who just received their birth certificate. So that's the whole ceremony. And
I'm going to click over here to Zara, who's somewhat older here. Yeah. How did she become stateless? Why doesn't she have a nationality?
She's actually a victim of baby selling. So I actually got a hold of baby selling is a big issue in Malaysia, and victims of baby selling, when you identify them and you get them out from away from syndicates and stuff, come with no papers. There's no birth certs, no documents, anything to show that where she was born, etc. So she's already automatically stateless.
Right. Wow.
So that's how it starts. Yeah.
See, Bronwyn, that's one story, but the issue with statelessness is there are so many different categories of stories.
Yeah.
You focus on the sub-Saharan part of Africa. What can you share from that part of the world?
Sub-Saharan Africa has similarities to the situation in Malaysia, and in particular there are a lot of the post-empire zones of the world. So Sub-Saharan Africa, a large chunk of Asia, the former Soviet Union, where a lot of the problems relate to when the colonial powers left or when states split up. The people who were kind of between the cracks, who had migrated during the period of empire, for example, find themselves in a country where people say, no, you don't belong. You belong over the border and the other side. But actually, they're born and brought up where they find themselves now.
So Bronwyn, give us an example. Give us a country where we can relate to.
Well, the one that's best known in Africa is Côte d'Ivoire, and there is a fantastic quote from Guillaume Soro, who was the leader of the rebel movement in Côte d'Ivoire when there was a civil war there, and subsequently became prime minister. And he said, give us our identity cards and we'll hand over our Kalashnikovs, just indicating you had maybe a third of the population of the country which was struggling to get recognition of its nationality. The government in Côte d'Ivoire has now changed, and there are steps being taken to address it. But it shows that at the extreme level, the question of a lack of nationality is not just a problem for the individual, but it's actually a problem for the security of the state, because you have so many people who just feel completely disenfranchised.
In hearing the stories that Bronwyn told, and of course that Tini told, we're also hearing similar ones from other parts of the world. This is a video comment I want to share from someone who sent us this from Jordan. This is his experience. Have a listen.
My name is Ala Kissab. I have a Jordanian mother and a Moroccan father. I have no ID. I live in Jordan for about 32 years. I can't have a drive license. I can't go out with my own freedom. I can't have a treatment. I wish to see the ocean because just like a small jail here in my house. I can't marry. I can't put my money in the bank. I can't live.
So he mentions it's a small jail in his house, and we hear these stories, but not everyone online understands why this happens. So Mark, we got this tweet from someone who says, how can a person be stateless? And he uses that hashtag, I belong. Mark?
Yeah, it's an anomaly. It shouldn't happen, but it does. And there are a number of reasons. Bronwyn mentioned this issue of the disintegration of states and emergence of new states. That's one of the big causes, surprisingly enough. There are still 600,000 people in Europe who are stateless because of the breakup of the Soviet Union over 20 years ago. You also have issues of discrimination on the basis of ethnicity or on the basis of gender. So there are still 27 countries around the world where women cannot confer their nationality to their children. So if they can't acquire the nationality of the father because he is stateless or can't confer the nationality under the law of his state, then the children will also be stateless. Then you have situations where children are stateless from the moment they are born because their parents are stateless. because there aren't adequate provisions in the nationality law of the country in which they are born. Another cause is issues of procedures for birth registration and acquisition of documentation which proves nationality. And in some countries, it's very difficult for people to acquire proof of nationality because of all of the bureaucratic requirements, which, for example, may make it impossible for people whose parents are not themselves registered to be registered at birth and to later acquire an identity document.
Mark, have you at UNHCR, have you boiled down all the many reasons why someone could be stateless? Are there like 50? Or are they just like 6 key ones?
If you look at, actually, interestingly enough, if you look at our action plan, you'll see that we try and address 7 of the main causes of statelessness. Yeah. But this is very much a situation-specific problem, because every country has a specific nationality law and its own set of practices relating to nationality, and so really, there are a whole range of situations around the world.
Sure. Malika?
There's another question here that I want to share, Femi, and this one I'll direct to you, Nermeen. This is Rachel. Hearing these stories, she says, well, then how does this impact access to education, to healthcare, to work opportunities? And Nermeen, of course, this affects you in your own life. So what do you see the effects of these questions that Rachel's raising?
Yeah, these are important questions, and I'm glad you had a video segment from someone in Jordan who articulated the problem he faces. He is basically living in a cell, almost jail-like conditions, because he's unable to earn money, he's unable to educate himself, he's unable to own property, he's unable to marry someone who is not stateless herself, because parents worry about giving their daughters away to men who cannot give nationalities to their grandchildren and to their wife. This has become a cycle. I like the comment that Bronwyn made as well about this being a concern for the state, not only for the individual. So while it is important to say that the individual is impacted, as of today, I was told about problems, a social worker working with juveniles, saying that most of the young boys she's working with are children of who don't have a nationality and don't have who do not belong, and this is a problem that will grow, and this is what we're trying to work on in Jordan.
So Tini, when you heard about the UNHCR campaign I Belong, where they were trying to end statelessness in the next decade, what did you make of that? Because you've got a sort of a very personal experience of statelessness with the children that you've brought into your home.
Yeah. Well, basically, when it came out on the 4th of November, I believe, I definitely forwarded and put it on Facebook, etc. and stuff. But I think it resonated for a lot of reasons, because we don't have an exact number of how many children are stateless here in Malaysia. We know there's a lot. We know that a lot of it is because of red tape and bureaucracy. You know, we've got the different kinds of stateless categories here. So you have the Rohingyas, and you have the Sabah children, and you know, you have the Aborigines, and you have children who are born out of wedlock. You have foundlings. So you know, and all of us are having the same kind of problem. So I think it's an opportune time to come out with this campaign, because it's something for me to show, and there's a tool for me to use to advocate and say, look, this is what's happening around the world. This is something I can bring to the government and say, look, we need to look at this. You know, Malaysia is now on the UN Security Council, and it's also leading in the ASEAN regional thing next year.
Sure.
And so it's a perfect opportunity for Malaysia to jump on board and look at how to tackle the issue, and to have some kind, and like I said, for us to have some kind of advocacy tool to use, and this video is perfect, I think.
Nermeen, I see you nodding and going, what's behind that?
This is the time for us to come together and actually recognize that this is a universal problem, regardless of how it came to, how it was contextualized in each of our countries. Ours is a gender bias. In other places, it's as a result of war or imperialism. And we do need to have that critical mass behind this issue so that it does look like it has champions. I think this is the one. For a long time, we felt we were working alone. I'm sort of happy and saddened to know that there are so many in the world. In Jordan, we have 67,000 families affected by this law, and these are the numbers we know of. So we do need to look at it, and Jordan is a very small country. This is a huge number, and it is a ticking time bomb, both on a personal level for these families, but also for the country, as I said earlier.
So Mark,
if I can jump in.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark, go ahead.
No, it's interesting because what Narmina said is very much what we hear from many organizations around the world and many grassroots organizations of stateless persons themselves. People really feel that they're working on their own, and so there's a lot of disconnects between organizations. And what we want to see is the emergence of a true international movement, like we have seen on child soldiers or on anti-personnel mines. And this is an issue that really affects all regions, as has been mentioned. There are a lot of organizations which have concerns relating to this. There are a lot of governments which have taken action.
Mark, so people watching this are going, so what have you done? Because you've got a fantastic looking campaign, which you teamed up with the United Colours of Benetton, and you can see when you look at the campaign ads and the PSAs, it looks amazing. But what have you actually done, or what are you seeing in terms of progress being made on the ground?
Well, that's interesting because we have seen in the last 3 or 4 years the beginnings of a groundswell on this. There's been a real awakening of the international community. It's not enough yet, but we were seeing the beginnings of what we need to see.
For instance, which countries doing where you're like, that was great, I felt really happy when they did this or changed this legislation? What would that be?
Well, we've seen, for example, in the last 10 years that 4 million stateless people have acquired a nationality, and that's been in countries like Kyrgyzstan in Central Asia, in Sri Lanka, in Bangladesh, in the Russian Federation, where many people have been naturalized. And we've also seen many countries which have discriminatory provisions in their nationality laws, where women cannot confer nationality to their children, which have changed those laws. And those countries are very diverse: Indonesia and Bangladesh, Kenya and Senegal, Suriname, Egypt, Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia. So there is really quite a few states out there which have taken action in recent years, and that I think is very important because other countries can see that this problem can be solved. And frequently we're talking about solutions which are not very costly.
You know, Mark, I'm so glad that you raised the issue of women not being able to confer their nationality to their children. There is a video comment we received from Nepal, and this is one place where that's not able to happen. So have a listen to this.
I'm a single mother of 2 stateless daughters. My daughters are stateless because our law here does not allow children to obtain citizenship through mother. My elder daughter this year had to give up her dream of studying medicine and become a doctor, because she does not have the document to show which country she belongs to.
So Nermeen, of course, that is not so much progress, but in the same issue in your country, you say that there is progress.
Yes, there is. I mean, I'm married to an English man, and my children are lucky in that they have this alternative identity, that they are British and they hold those passports. But because they live with me in Jordan, they have struggled with belonging here, because for the 4 or 5 years we've been here, they've not been able to take on the identity of their mother and have the rights that come with it. But we did have a change. We've been working because of the political situation around this issue. It's not just a gender bias. We've been working on obtaining civil rights for all for the spouses and the children of Jordanian women. And very recently, the Ministry of Interior in Jordan, actually last week, announced that they are going to give privileges akin to civil rights to the children of these Jordanian women. This is a breakthrough. They recognize this category. Now we can start pushing the vote a little bit.
Sure. Bronwyn, what did you want to add?
I was going to say that I think the increasing number of countries that are providing greater gender equality is really an illustration of how our grassroots campaign puts pressure from UNHCR, but also women's rights organizations all over the globe. that have really made that difference. And another case where the same sort of thing is happening is in relation to dual nationality, which historically was really not allowed at all. It was regarded as being a complete anomaly, and is increasingly allowed. International law, as it were, provides a choice there, but very often the issue with statelessness is that the government where the person lives says, you're not from our country, you're from the country of your father, or from the country of your mother, or from the country of your grandparents, and they won't accept you as belonging to the country where you actually feel yourself to belong. And even if the person theoretically might actually be able to go to that other country and get papers from there, the fact is that they belong where they've born, where they've grown up, where their life is. And that is changing as well, under the influence of increasing migration and diaspora campaigning. But there's a real need for it to be acknowledged that a person not only has the right to a nationality, but actually has the right to the nationality of the place where they feel they belong.
Sure. Let me just show our audience this UNHCR's 10-point action plan to end statelessness. Let me highlight a couple of things here. So, existing major situations of statelessness, to resolve that you could only just have one of those, Mark, and then you'd be done, right? But there's some very specific things here. No child is born stateless. Prevent denial, loss or deprivation of nationality on discriminatory grounds. We have 10 here. I won't read out all 10, but here's another one that's really important. Ensure that birth registration for prevention of statelessness, and so it goes on. You are trying to do this in 10 years, Mark. I am actually going to say this is the 60th anniversary of the first convention for statelessness. 60th anniversary, and you still have a lot of work to be done. How do you think it's going to get done in a decade?
Well, I don't think we're going to be able to resolve every single individual case, but through the campaign, we've already seen that we can achieve far better awareness, and through better awareness, we can achieve more political will, because ultimately this is about the will of governments to change their nationality laws, their procedures, and their policies. That's what needs to happen, and this campaign, as we've heard from Tini, for example, is helping to galvanize action from civil society around the world. And it's also changing the views of governments, and also bringing government champions to the fore. And so we're optimistic that this will make a difference. Already since the launch of the campaign, we've had 2 countries which have become parties to the Statelessness Conventions. Argentina just became a party on Monday.
Right. Yeah. I'm actually looking at your Facebook page here, and so you're giving a shout out here to Argentina, and then also if I scroll down here as well, Niger, is that another one that's just come on board quite recently as well, Mark?
Exactly.
All right. Very good. All right, Malika.
Well, you asked that question, is 10 years enough? We also asked that question to our community. They weren't as optimistic as Mark was. This person writes back, when we asked what will it take for this initiative to succeed, Quentin says it will take 50 more years. So Tini, in about, I'll get your answer in the post show, because I'm interested in what you have to say about how long it would take.
All right, now before we go, Al Jazeera's 101 East has much more on this topic. Here's a preview of the team's latest investigation.
The Malaysian capital of Kuala Lumpur has one of the world's largest populations of people seeking asylum. They're exploited, harassed by police.
This is a real UNHCR card, and they ripped it up. Police ripped it up. Why police? Money, no.
And when detained, refugees say they're starved and beaten. We go undercover to document the mistreatment by authorities and those tasked with helping Malaysia's unwanted.
So that's Malaysia's Unwanted with Steve Chow, showing this week on Al Jazeera. And on the next AJ stream, well, Malika is taking some time off, but I will be here with Omar Butter. So mark your calendars. 2034 is when we may find extraterrestrial intelligence. That's according to senior astronomer Steve Shostak. On Monday's show, it's your chance to ask him everything you've ever wanted to know about the hunt for alien life. Be sure to join us then. Stay with us. The post show is next. Stream.aljazeera.com. See you there. Thanks for watching. Hello there, this is the Stream's online post show, and we've been talking about the UNHCR's plan to end global statelessness within 10 years. Let me show you here. This is from the special report that the UNHCR put out in 2013, and it states the party to the Statelessness Convention. So there have been two, one in 1954, one in 1961. They're quite old. So all the areas here, the grey areas here, parts of the world that have not signed up to either of those statelessness conventions, which tells us how much of the world we still need to get on board. If we're talking about what do you think is going to be the most difficult thing, Bronwyn, to get people on board with this, what do you think it is?
I think, like Mark said, there's a lot of progress that can be made, but also the question is quite a deeply political one. In some countries, it's really not an issue at all. Historically, the laws have been set up and that they're accepted that, for example, if you're born in the country and you're still resident there at majority, you can acquire the nationality by declaration and so forth. But in other countries, suggesting that a child should have that right is an absolutely shocking thing to say politically. And could, for example, disturb the electoral calculation or affect allocation of resources and so forth. So I think that in some countries, it's become a really highly political issue. In other countries, and this I think is interesting because actually law reform can make a difference. In some other countries, it's not an issue in such a deep way. There are still anomalous individuals, but in terms of having a huge number, that it's not so difficult. But for some countries like Cote d'Ivoire, like Democratic Republic of Congo, Kenya, there are a number of countries in Africa where it's very sensitive and it's going to be quite difficult to make real progress.
What's the sensitivity? I'm not going to ask this to Mark because he's at the UN and he has to be nice to all of the countries, but what does a country have to benefit to gain from not allowing people who are living in their country citizenship of that country?
I think the country as a whole, if you talk about the country as a corporate entity, it has nothing to gain from that. Individual politicians, on the other hand, may very well gain from saying, it's the foreigners who are the fault. I mean, it's the normal case where you have economic competition for resources, and the easiest thing to do for any politician in any country, anywhere in the world, to say, it's the people who are the foreigners who are to blame. And in that context, bringing stateless people on board, especially where there's quite a large population of people who are stateless, it's easy for politicians to manipulate that and to say that we don't want to give those people a right. I think to say the easiest way of getting at it is actually to start from the situation of children. It's very hard to say that a 3-month-old baby is going to cause you trouble, actually. And I think the argument for states and for politicians is to say, if you leave this problem unsolved, it's going to be more trouble in the long run. And actually, if you make people feel welcome in the country, then they will actually make a contribution to that country as well.
Tini, before we entered into the post show, we left it a little cliffhanger because I wanted your thoughts on this tweet that we got from Quentin. And he said that he thinks that this initiative and the end goal in ending statelessness is really going to take 50 more years. So Tini, do you think it's achievable in 10 years?
I'm hoping it does. I have no intentions of leaving my children stateless or the kids that I work with stateless for that long. It's already been a long time for my daughter and stuff. Yeah, well, no. So no, not 50 years, not 10. Well, 10 maybe, but less if possible. I think as far as I'm concerned, the whole idea of who's rendered stateless in this country, for a lot of the categories, is something that's man-made. The laws, they can be changed, they can be amended. I think the problem in Malaysia is definitely political. Blame the foreigners is a good one. But I don't think that the policymakers in Malaysia in particular understand the difference between why you're stateless and who is stateless and the rest of the people that they're talking about, whether it's migrant workers and stuff, and everyone has equal rights. But I think in particular, stateless people in Malaysia are more vulnerable because they absolutely have no documents to show. There's nothing. It's true. You can't leave the country. You can't go home. This is home. You can't. I don't know where they're going.
But you can allege that the people are foreigners. But it's exactly the same problem in many countries. If you take the Democratic Republic of Congo, you have several 100,000 people who speak Kinyarwanda, the language that's spoken in Rwanda, and there's a lot of popular sentiment and political pickup on that, saying that these people simply don't belong here. But you have now generations, and many of them have always been there. The border was drawn right through the middle of that ethnic
Exactly.
And they've always been resident on the territory, but somehow their nationality is always questioned.
Yeah, exactly. 3-4 generations of stateless people. I don't know how they're going to figure it out. You know, there's a movement by the government. There's a proposition actually where, you know, they're planning to look at who gets registered in Sabah, which is one of the states in Malaysia, and they want to look at taking DNA. And I'm going, DNA samples is not going to, you know, determine whether you're stateless or not if, you know, your parents and your grandparents and your great-grandparents have been stateless. So I don't know how they're going to do it and figure things out. But I think, you know, like I said, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. No, because I think that one of the things about this campaign that's going to be paradoxical in a way is that it might actually, as it were, increase the numbers of stateless people. I don't mean it will really increase the number of stateless people. I think the campaign is a really good idea and it will make a big difference. But by shining a spotlight on the question of statelessness, I think we're going to find new populations, or not new populations, but we're going to really bring them into the foreground and make them recognized in a way that hasn't been before. And so that in a way, although I think that in 10 years a lot of progress can be made, it's going to be a rolling program because we're going to find new sets of people who have not been included in the current enumeration of people who are stateless.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you, Bronwyn. That's exactly what we hope occurs. So, you know, if the problem is identified in a given country, that we can then work with the government and civil society to find a solution for it. I think there is increasingly awareness among governments that they don't want to have large numbers of undocumented people in the territory, and statelessness is basically a recipe for just that. And it also has all kinds of impacts on social inclusion and development, because people are excluded from the mainstream of society and are unable to contribute to their full potential. So increasingly we're seeing that governments are understanding that this is not in their best interest either, and that is a major catalyst for change.
I agree with you on that completely. But I was in West Africa recently, and this is picking up on something that Tini said. There's a huge push in the context of the security situation in West Africa, with Boko Haram, with the situation in Mali, for improved documentation, for biometric identity cards, for everything to be computerized. And I think there's a real sense that, you know, if only we make the systems biometric, we'll fix this problem. Say, yes. No, actually, you need to reform your law. You need to create proper procedures. You need to be transparent about what's going on. You need to provide people with assistance in getting their documents. And there's a real sense that, you know, we'll just wave the biometric wand and the problem will go away, and it really won't. There's a need to address the fundamental causes of the problem to start off with.
Naveen, sorry, Naveen wanted to jump in there. Go ahead, Naveen, then Mark will come back to you.
No, that's fine. I was just agreeing with the comments made there.
Sure.
And about, so there is nothing to add. I'm happy to listen to the other people.
Very good. Mark?
No, just to add that the introduction of a new generation of identity documents is also one of these moments in which you can create a new stateless population, because if the procedures are not correctly designed, you will make it very, very difficult for certain people to prove their identity, including their nationality. So it's also one of these moments in which we need to be very attentive to how certain groups or individuals can be affected, because conceivably you can have thousands and thousands of people made stateless overnight because they cannot satisfy the documentation requirements, for example, for acquisition of a new identity card.
In countries that don't really have a serious statelessness problem. So, for example, in Botswana, that's exactly what's happening. And people are, you know, going to renew their ID, and they're suddenly being told Botswana does not allow dual nationality, that they have to go and renounce some other nationality, otherwise their papers won't be in order and they won't be able to get the new ID.
Right.
And people are saying, but, you know, I've never had to do that before. I've had a Botswanan identity card before. What's going on? You know, that's exactly right, and that happens repeatedly.
All right, guests, thank you so much for helping us unpack this issue. It's very, very complicated, and it's almost different for every single country, and complex even within different countries as well. So Bronwyn and Naveen and Tini and Mark, thank you very much for bringing this issue to our international audience on Al Jazeera. Really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. You take care too. All right, Malika.
Well, I will give the last word to our community because for those of you watching at home who want to know how you can follow the story, you can do it just like this person did, Salim on Twitter. Use the hashtag #IBelong. Of course, you can also go to the Streams website, streams.aljazeera.com, where there's an infographic on being stateless. Lots of great facts there, including 10 million people that are stateless and the countries around the world where you can find them.
All right, let me leave you with one more graphic here. Let me just scoot it up just a bit. There you go. Stream.aljazeera.com. You can look at all of our infographics, particularly for this particular issue. Stream.aljazeera.com. Now, on the next show, Malika is off. In fact, you're lucky that she's even still sitting here. She has got her time booked off, but I will be joined by Omar Badar. He'll be our digital producer all of next week. And I'm going to say, mark your calendars. 2034 is when we may find extraterrestrial intelligence. That's according to a senior astronomer called Seth Shostak. Now, Monday's show is your chance to ask him everything that you've ever wanted to know about the hunt for alien life. Be sure to join us then. Until then, I'll see you online.